Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Ag Uncensored podcast with me, your lovely host, Nathan Filati. Um, I'm doing this from the pickup again. I don't know. It's just easier to do while I walk the dogs, and I got some other meetings. So you know, you use your time wisely. That's what they say. Um, so today I want to kind of go through a I don't know. I don't even know if it's a real problem quite yet. It kind of is and kind of isn't in the good old AgTech precision ag world. But before I get there, what got me to thinking about this was another article I just um, listened to, or not listened to, read this morning from Ben Voss about OEMs and the issues. Now this was like a part two, so I think I skimmed the part one before, but anyways, more or less what his point was that OEMs, there's tier one OEMs and tier two OEMs on the, you know, ag equipment side. Tier one is your John Deere's, AGCO's, CNH, etc. The ones making a lot of the equipment out there. Then you have your tier two, which is, maybe like your air seeders, tillage tools, kind of, secondary equipment. Um, and to his point, there's been so much tech added to tier one equipment over the years that much of the price is in that. And then, of course, much of the service is in that. And there's also, let's look at the world. There's a natural obsolescence to many of the tech things that are out there. You just look in your kitchen. One of my good friends he's an appliance tech. He knows everything about them, what goes wrong with them, and everything. When I asked him when we bought a new fridge, 2 years ago, I was like, "What fridge should last the longest?" He's like, "Doesn't matter. They all go out in 7 to 10 years. Does not matter. Some are just worse than others. Some are easier to fix, cheaper to fix, things like that. Some have better warranties, etc." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's insanely sad because then I got my garage beer fridge that was, I don't know, made in the 60s or 70s. Works awesome. Just got to defrost it once in a while because it's in a garage." That's how ag is in general right now, too. And this is what Ben uh, talks about. Not the exact, analogy, but the essence of the obsolescence that is some of the tech in the newest and most priciest equipment. Look at the latest combines and tractors with all this stuff. Oh, you can do automation. Just a week or so ago, they're showing the automated tractor at the Grand Farm right down the way here. And, it's going up and down tillage. And I was talking about last week, some farmers just they don't really care about that. They're not going to buy it because they just want to drive. Tillage. Going to till a field is actually kind of enjoyable because you don't got to worry about a lot of the other crap. You can just kind of go. Planting, seeding, spraying, harvesting. There's a lot more going on, a lot more dynamics, more stressful. That's actually what people want more automated, really. The tillage part, I mean, yes and no. Depends on your size and what you're doing. Sure, it fits. Either way, to the point though, is that new, 9R extractor and all the other brands, kind of semi-similar. You're in either close to a million or a little over a million. Well, in reality, probably half the cost is in all of that technology fit up. And just with modern, emissions standards and things like that. Yeah, everyone kind of gets it, but then to his point, there's a fear and there's a kind of a natural obsolescence of, okay, is that automation stuff with that sensor on the cab that's kind of driving it, and it's whether it's lidar or whatever the heck it is, or these different vision systems, are they going to last as long as the good old, you know 4440 that's been in the family since the mid 70s, still runs and does an auger tractor? Heck, you can even run a small planter or drill or sprayer on. I mean, it still does its job. It still is a tractor. Is that super expensive tractor still going to be a workable tractor? And the resale value, I mean, first year buyers, they're paying for all of that. Second buyers, maybe it's a few years later, they're getting it for a lot cheaper because the depreciation on the technology goes out, basically. And you're hoping it works. Now, I can't say exactly which modern equipment is going to last longer or not. No one really knows. Some of it's so new, you just don't know. Much like with robotics, that's why there's a fear of owning those things, because like, okay, maybe this can do the job the first year, maybe even second year, maybe even third year. What about after that with some of this stuff? Season by season, you're using it for a short period of time, probably that exact piece of tech, and then you don't think about it for another year. That's insanely common in the ag world. It's like, oh, think of software, and this is where I'm trying to kind of bridge the two, and then the pieces around it and sensors and all that stuff. You're sitting down for maybe, I don't know, call it a week's worth of time between your agronomist, soil testing, all this stuff. Build your super nice variable rate map. You're paying whatever you're paying for the software package or use, and then data, whatever. Say it's $10 an acre with everything and services. Maybe it's more. You go through all that, and then you have like one moment to get it right. One moment in that field to get it right. And I've talked about this before too. Then you get weather and other technical issues that can happen with the hardware itself, with the automation maybe on the tractor even, or combine or sprayer or whatever. And to Ben's point, it's like, that's all great. And there are people that want that. The big farms, the XYZ, the more modern this and that. But he points out, and go read the articles and get full context, is there needs to be a better model. And where he's kind of suggesting is, fine, all this stuff can have the tech, but you can buy it without it, or you can remove it and you could put it back. And so instead of that $1 million tractor, and all that tech maybe causing future issues with some of the automation and all these things, if you could just remove it and use it as a tractor, and I mean, it kind of can work that way to a point, but some things are so integrated that you cannot remove them. And that's a problem, because that also stokes fear in the second and third buyers. And to his point, if you can remove that, and then maybe you can remove it and someone else wants it on a second tier and they want to, a refurbished version of it, which is common in other industries, getting some kind of refurbished add-ons. Think of a motor in a vehicle. You can buy a refab motor. A battery. You restock the battery. Transmissions. I mean, they're not necessarily remaking the castings all the time for a new transmission. You just get a reman. Construction is, and ag does this all the time with engine components and whatnot. Are we thinking that same way with precision ag hardware and ag tech hardware? I mean, to a point, but I'm not seeing the refurbished part and the refurbished sensor or whatever. And to his point, as long as you can remove some of these things, these barriers, there's not as much fear to buy that secondary piece of equipment, and there wouldn't be as much depreciation too. And it's also another option for a farm that doesn't want all that stuff to just have a different version of it. Of course, when it comes to emissions and stuff, that gets tricky. And then, there's people that kind of want to hot rod the tractor because, the right to repair. All of that is real. Of course, it seems like there's plenty of pushback, and there's actually getting some, even legislative side of things that are getting some traction to not kill it, but hold it back a little bit to give some more options. I think that is smart. Either way, OEMs dealing with this, they need a different model. So when I think of sensors and robotics and automation on the kind of equipment side of things, the hardware side. I think the industry needs to do something different there to kind of keep its value prop alive and to have some sustainability in the industry instead of always having to buy the newest, best, and latest, greatest thing. And then that mindset gets into general public. You look at some of the majors going to the big shows, even shows that are not ag based, and promoting, oh, we're this, we're tech, we're this, we're the Apple of ag. We all know what we're talking about, but all the others are trying to catch up. The others, CNH bought Raven to really try to catch up to this stuff. Paid a ton of money. Trimble bought, they got Precision Planting, and then they got Trimble for that thing. It's like we got to put tech into our stuff because that's what people want. Well, yeah, the bigger modern farms want that. Second tier, smaller, mid-sized farms, they're okay with it, but they really just want the efficiency of that larger machine, and it's optionary to do the efficiency of the other stuff because they might not need it. As I talked about last week, is some farms' efficiency gains, the best ones, are not necessarily technology. It's being able to have that machine that's 40 feet instead of 30 feet and can go 2 miles an hour faster or a mile an hour faster, and or 60 feet now instead of 40 feet, whatever you want to say. And they can afford that larger machine that can do more capacity, do it quicker, because that can help them in a lot of other factors, from just labor to time savings to timing of when you get a crop off, when you get it sprayed, when you get it planted, before a rain or some weather event. That can have insanely huge benefits. I mean, if you can hit the right rain and get done with all your crops before that big $1 million rain or $1 billion rain that sweeps through the state or region, I mean, that can be a difference in $50 to $100 an acre, because maybe it's going to rain for another 5 days and then you're delayed, and then maturity issues happen, other stuff happens, it's too muddy, you end up basically mudding the crop in and you're compacting it. Spraying, same situation. Harvesting, same situation. So the efficiency and gain is not always what the machine does automatically, it's how much you can get done. This is that's the essence of farming half the time, is just timing before weather events. And so if the tech gets in the way, breaks down, doesn't work, can't get your thing in, when it's brand new, probably works a lot better. Little used, not so much. So we need other options. And so that's one part of this. The other part, to this point, to Ben's point in the OEM side, so that's a whole nother problem in itself. And I look at, more of my experienced world is the software side of things, the FMIS. It's like, okay, are we doing the same thing there? Over time, naturally, most softwares will kind of build up their tool sets, add more and more, do more and more things, add more data, processes together, things that help the automation in the newer equipment. And it's focused on the newer connections and newer APIs. When, let's look at reality. The most popular farm management system on the planet, I'm pretty sure, is Ag Leader SMS. Download the copy, put it on your computer. Yes, it can connect now to like their Agfinity and stuff like that. And there's a few other older softwares, some legacy things that are still out there, like FarmWorks. I talked to a guy a couple weeks ago, still uses his old copy, hasn't been supported for 10 years, but it still works, because those things had to work. They just, like our old version of our SatShot system called, we have a newer version called Landscope, but our older one, we had to download on the computer. There is some people not too long ago still using it, and still works because it had to work. But it's simpler. Are we thinking about that on the software side of things too, where we're adding so much other stuff, we forget what the core elements of what people wanted the software for. Like I've talked about this before of, let's get back to the basics. Because, adoption is kind of stagnant. And, the trend lines were going up before all the, the crazy money coming in clearly increased the awareness and somewhat of the use, but not the full use of what was possible necessarily with like full on variable rate and full on zone soil testing. And I'll throw grids in there. I'm in particular on those ones, but we were just getting the farmers to get to that. And because so much new tech and new options and this new app and that new app, they almost got in the way because there's so many, and maybe they work great right away, but then they didn't form and fit into the landscape later. So then problems arose, or basically something didn't work and the farmer said, nope, not doing this. Or maybe the ag retailer said, no, that's too much for me. I can't, this isn't a sustainable process. It was cool right away. They paid the bill. It's like, yeah, this doesn't really fit. Are we thinking of that when we're building software to just last and do its job instead of adding a million different things? And there's a lot of different ways to think about this. I've worked for larger software groups in various ways, from trying to sell them stuff to enhance their things, to development, to, yeah, there is something to be said to overcomplicate it, to add too much. At the same time, there's still a need, because the businesses that are using majority of the software to help farmers, and they're providing a service, they need as many options in there, because not every farmer wants the same thing. So all that stuff has to be kind of in there, the possibilities of it. And, it's a real balance of sticking to your guns or adding some of these new features or new processes that can overcomplicate. It doesn't necessarily mean it will. Sometimes it brings new opportunity, new market, new sales, new markets, new customers, all that fun stuff. Sometimes it can be a hindrance. It all kind of just depends on, I think, how you productize it, how you work through it, the understanding of what it actually is. Like for us, for me, I know imagery really well. So we've kind of stuck to that. We could have built more onto our system. We were going to, but others were starting to build all this other stuff. And we're like, well, we'll just be another, we're kind of a diamond in the rough. Let's stay that. Let's stick to what we know. And so we stuck to what we know. And that's, that's okay. And we know it really well. And we know how to implement it and integrate it and deal with it and know the whole process. Now, if we want to add our stuff into somewhere, we can be looked at as that expert in that. And there's people that do that better in various other tasks within the software world. Maybe it's, tracing chemicals or seed. Maybe it's soil testing parts, scouting. Maybe it's grain. Maybe it's financial, whatever. Those are their core things, but then they add other things to kind of supplement. But what can happen poorly, and I've seen this a lot, is that they'll just add on this new thing just because it's a popular thing, people want it, without understanding the full part of that industry. Imagery is a great example. There's software's like, well, I'll just bring it in from here and I'll showcase it. Nothing wrong with it. It's fine. But to really get the value out of it, you need the right things set in there. And this can equal any other type of thing. You really need to know the core thing, and then, some of these other things can just kind of maybe get in the way, or you can't fully utilize what's possible. So those are some things to think about from that OEM side. I think we need to rethink of how, from the software side, is how some of these newer pieces are brought in. It needs to be done right. It's needed. It's absolutely needed. It's just how it's done is need to be thought more about just than doing it. And the right mindset, the right knowledge, the right situations, they need to be in place instead of just, let's just add another widget, another app. There's a lot more to it. So something to think about this week. And I'll write about it more, but thanks for listening. We'll see you later.